Hello, everyone, and welcome for our course about risk management and crisis adaptation in food systems. Risk management is important essential for food science and agri-food industry. Modern food systems face increasing uncertainty due to the climate change, market volatility, preference of consumers, technological failure, and global crisis. So the master of crisis and risk is on a point essential for any industry. This course aims to equip learners with technical, digital, green, and resilience competencies to manage risk and adapt to crises in food systems. Learning objective align with global sustainability frameworks and food security indicators presented by our world and data supporting evidence-based decision making. And this link, I shared this link with more information. So I invite the learners to consult these links for more information about importance of the study of risk management and crisis adaptation. About importance, it's very important to indicate that risk management is essential to ensure continuity, safety, and efficiency in the food system operating under uncertainty. This advantage it it one of the base for each successful project in food industry. But effective risk management support proactive planning rather than reactive response. By identify hazard early, food systems actor can reduce loss, improve resilience, and protect livelihoods. For example, in this picture, we present different management such as ISO 2002, 22000 ISO for management and for management of security and food industry, and also HACCP that as a base and GMP for base of this. All this certification or this food systems allowed to analyze of risk and master of the of crisis and each industry, in each food industry. Food waste disruption and sustainability is one of the important point in the management of risk. Loss indicated if inefficiency, weak control, or exposure to shocks such as climatic extreme or logistic failure. Reducing food waste directly contribute to sustainable by lowering environmental footprints and economic losses. As indicated in the link, with more information regarding this different phenomenon, and also in this picture with the importance of the challenge of the food waste for industry, for food industry, and the management of the risks. So about outcomes of and competencies of this course, the study unit develops integrated competence and combining technical knowledge, digital skills, green innovation, and resilience thinking. The table present the target competencies for learners such as technical, digital, green, resilience, and all these competencies allowed with the studying of different axes in this presentation. For the first section of our presentation, fundamentals of risk management. Risk management is in a food system is grounded in understanding hazards, exposure, and system response. It is an essential point to analysis of the risk, as for example HACCP analysis. It's the first step of HACCP systems in any industry. It's analysis of risks and danger. Foundation principle emphasizes prevention, preparedness, and continuous improvement. These principles are visualized drought risk, cycle diagram used in food safety, and also in agri-food industry processing standard with and indicated in this link. About risk, vulnerability, and resilience, to define these terms, risk refers to probability and impact of adverse event, while vulnerability describes susceptibility to harm. Resilience reflects the capacity to absorb shocks and recover. Resilient thinking shifts focus from avoiding risk entirely to management uncertainty. So, and it's very important to distinguish between between this different indicator and in this link we have more importance about this term of resilience, vulnerability, and risk. A key concept in risk and resilience is very important to distinguish between different concepts such as risk and definition, and some example for as indicated in this table. For example, for risk, for example, crop failure, and for vulnerability, it's a poor storage, and for resilience is diversification related to recovery capacity. About type of risks in food systems, the base of any normalization, for example, for ISO 22,000, for example, or for HACCP, the first step of this normalization standards is analysis of risk and determination of danger. There is four danger in general: microbiological and chemical, physical, and allergen. That is the four type of danger, and this danger is relative to risk. Risk is the probability of the danger. So it's very important to distinguish different type of risks. Technical and environmental risk is one of the important points relative to impact of environmental, such as climatic change, variability, and variability of pollution, for example. In this graph, we present some example, concrete example accessed with this link, with differentiation of impact regarding the importance of different risk and independent of or dependently of the sector of activity and of each industry, and all this it depends of the climatic change. Integrated risk visual from FEO demonstrate how environmental stress translate and technical failure within processing and storage system. All this information are accessible with this link. About economic and social risks, economic risks involve price volatility, market disruption, and input cost fluctuation, while social risks relate to labor, availability, and governance. And this table will present some type and driver and their impact, for example, economic, social, technical, and environmental risks. About food waste and system risks, that is point number 3 for our first section. The food waste reflect unmanaged risk, multiple systems stage. Paulo's distribution figure shows concentration of waste production and post-harvest level. So food waste is a result of an unmanaged risk. When we don't master the risk, we have the food waste. So it's it's an inconvenient of and the result and consequence of this unmanaged risk. Waste increases exposure to economic and environmental risk, while undetermined sustainability goals, as it presented in this figure with different food waste problems relatives in this figure, for example, relative to global warming and climatic change, for environmental, for economic loss, and also for, but in general, the food waste problems is related to unmanaged risk. So it's very important to analysis of risk in any industry to and so avoid food waste. About feedback loops between waste and risk, food waste amplifies risk drought feedback loops, increasing costs, emission, and system instability. Systems thinking diagram from FAO illustrate this, reinforcing cycles as indicated in this links. However, for breaking this, loops requires a coordination between different actors of supply chains, world, and all this information we have presented in this figure. About risk waste interaction table, we understanding how food waste contribute to risk help prioritize intervention, because before to analyze in the analysis of risk, for example, for HACCP, standard, the first step is to analysis of danger and relative to the risk. That is first, and to determine this, if it's the point, it's a critical point or not. So it's very important to analyze the danger for any step of the production chain, for example, in production and storage and also in distribution. Waste source is related in general to climate loss, spoilage, or delays for distribution, for example, and risk impact, and there is a different risk impact relative to income, safety, and market. Let's move to section number 2 about source and disruption. Disruption originate from internal failure and external shocks. As you can see in this picture, there is different type of disruption, potential disruption, and actual disruption. Understanding source of disruption enable targeted resilience, detect the origin of the problem, and then present solution for this disruption. About production level risks, any risk, there is a level for any risk, so determine the level of the risk is very important in any industry. Production level risk include climatic extreme, pests, and raw material shortage. EPCC climatic risks maps highlight increases exposure of agriculture to extreme event, as presented in this link. And for fall production risk, and then in the link and on the website of the FAO, there is this classification and figures that demonstrate how input shortage directly affect yields and food variability, as is presented in this figure with diverse and geopolitical influences for this diverse factors, such as, for example, climatic change, COVID-19, conflicts, and also for geopolitical influences with not just foods, but also different sectors, fuel, fertilizer, for example, also. And outcomes, it's food security, diet, nutrition, for example, environmental sustainability. So there is a lot of sectors and a lot of factors are related and interconnect between different sectors. Production risk table. In this table, we summarize different risk and cause and their effect. For example, drought, pests, and food shortage relative to climate, ecologic, and market. And for there is different effects relative to yield loss, quality, reduced output. So to avoid this effect, it's very important to manage the risk. About processing and storage risks, it's very important to indicate that processing and storage risks arise from equipment failure, contamination, and energy interruption, as presented in this figure with different level, as you indicated with food, for example, and risk relative to the composition of the food, for example, oxidative stress and the production of this redox compound and also for change of DNA damage, for example, for some product and protein denaturation, for example. So the issue is different, it depends of the different target of this product for consumer, but also for laboratory, for countries, and for improvement. It's very important to manage this risk, the biological risk, danger, chemical, allergic risk, and also physical risk. So it's very important to work with this interconnection vision between analysis of composition of the food based on the management of the risks. Risk amplification and processing is very important to indicate that risk it relative to each stage of process chain. For example, it's very important to for each stage it's very essential to analyze the equipment failure, the contamination potential, the energy costs, for different source and for different consequence if not managed, for example. And in this link, you will have more information. Learners are invited to consult these links to more information relative to each thematic. About distribution and market risks, distribution risks is one of the stage of the chain production. Distribution risks include logistic breakdown, transport delays, and price volatility. So no management of this stage risk in this stage produce different damage for your product. So supply chain mapping figures from World Bank, as you can see in this picture, studies how explain the infrastructure reliability affects market access, as you can see in this picture. So the management of risk is very important throughout all the world, and it's very important for food industry, but also for different food, for example, for logistics and for distribution. Regarding section number 3, let's move to analysis of risk and identification and assessment tools. Risk identification assessment tools provide structured method recognize. So now we know the importance of risk management and crisis adaptation. So it's very important to develop the tools and use some tools to manage risk. And this risk allow to recognize, analyze, prioritize traits and food systems. These tools support evidence-based decision making by transforming uncertainty into manageable information. In this picture, we present some tools that are used risk for identification of the risk. For example, the involving stakeholders and considering internal and external sources, monitoring adaptation. There's a lot of tools are used and developed for this and dependent of the activity and and production chain. Risk mapping and classification, there is a lot of type of risk as mentioned before. For risk of classes, there is technical risk, environmental risk, economic risk, with different description, as you can see on this table. And example for any type of this risk relative to economic breakdown, flow down, price volatility, for example. About qualitative risk assessment method, It is important to analyze the risk with measure qualitative measure, but also with some quantitative measures. For qualitative method, rely on expert judgment, experience, and descriptive scales to assess risk, severity, and likelihood. This picture, we present some this type of analysis of processes of identification of risk and analysis, identified risks, subject evaluation, and determined exposure. It's very important to do. And this method are particularly useful in small and medium food enterprises where digital data may be scarce. About quantitative analysis, quantitative risk assessment approach, it's relative to data, to enable and collect of data with analysis using some platforms. So quantitative assessment use numerical data, probability and statistical models to estimate risk magnitude. For example, we can use the EBM as spaces, for example, or Air Studio, for example, or Excel Stat. There is a lot of platforms that for statistical and probability analysis for this type of risk using different figures and analysis. For example, for quantitative analysis, we have this description of this description of the analysis of the quantitative analysis, and for qualitative we have the term, for example, the analysis of a physical of sensory analysis with level high or less, or color or differentiation without a number. For comparison of risk assessment method, there is a lot of method as used relative to the if it's qualitative or quantitative or semi-quantitative with different strengths, rapid screening, prioritization, and precision. This comparison table reflects FAO and OECD best practice for selection appropriate risk assessment tools depending on system complexity and data availability. Let's move to point number 33, and the last point in this first part of this document about indicators and early warning system. It's very important to predict and to analyze the risk and with different action. From this action, there is this technology of warning systems. Indicators and early warning systems enable proactive risk management by detecting signals before crises occur. If our early warning dashboard and monitor climate market, as you can find in this link. Digital indicators enhance preparedness by integrating real-time data, World Bank visualization, as you can see in this link, with more information to the management of risk with these systems of early warning. And digitalization of the early work is an important for analysis and prediction of the risks with different indicator. For example, Raffine anomaly or prices index or temperature as indication. Digital tools integrate satellite data, sensors, and marketing information to strengthen early warning capacity with some risk addressed are data sourcing. This technology, it's specific for the type of the risk, type of process, and type of equipment used for the product or the activity. That is all for this first part, and see you for the next part.